Hello, and welcome to another English story. Today's story is called The Mysterious Neighbor. It is a simple story about kindness, curiosity, and learning not to judge people too quickly. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. Let's begin. Emily had always dreamed of living in a peaceful place. After working in the city for many years, she finally decided to move into a small apartment building in a quiet neighborhood. The building was not very big, but it was comfortable and surrounded by beautiful trees and small gardens. The people living there were friendly. They greeted each other in the morning, helped each other with small problems, and often talked together in the evening. The woman living on the first floor helped her carry some boxes. A young couple from the second floor brought her a basket of fresh fruits. Everyone seemed kind and friendly. Everyone except one person. His name was Mr. Thomas. Mr. Thomas lived in the apartment next to Emily's. He was an older man who lived alone. He rarely talked to anyone. Every morning he left his apartment very early and returned late in the evening. He always walked quietly and kept his head down. At first, Emily thought he was simply a quiet person, but after a few days, she started noticing some unusual things. Mr. Thomas never opened his curtains. His apartment always looked dark, even during the day. Sometimes Emily heard strange sounds coming from his apartment. There were sounds of moving boxes, footsteps, and sometimes soft noises that she could not understand. One evening, while Emily was watering the plants near her door, she heard a loud sound from inside Mr. Thomas's apartment. It sounded like something had fallen. She became concerned. "Is everything okay?" she asked while gently knocking on his door. After a few seconds, the door opened slightly. Mr. Thomas appeared. He looked surprised to see her. "Yes, everything is fine," he said quietly. Emily smiled. "I heard a noise. I just wanted to check if you needed any help." Mr. Thomas shook his head. "No, thank you. I can manage." Then he politely closed the door. Emily stood there for a moment. She was not angry. She just felt a little confused. "He doesn't seem rude," she thought. "Maybe he just likes being alone." As days passed, Emily learned more about her neighbors. One afternoon she was talking with Sarah, the woman from the first floor. "Do you know anything about Mr. Thomas?" Emily asked. Sarah looked surprised. "Mr. Thomas?" "Yes, he lives next to me." Sarah lowered her voice. "Nobody really knows much about him." Emily looked curious. "What do you mean?" Sarah looked around before continuing. "He has lived here for almost 5 years, but he never joins any community events. He doesn't talk to people. Some neighbors think something strange is happening inside his apartment." Emily frowned. "Strange? Like what?" Sarah shrugged. "People hear noises at night. Some say he keeps secrets." Emily did not like hearing that. She believed people should not be judged because of rumors. "Maybe there is a simple explanation," Emily said. Sarah smiled. "Maybe you are right." A few days later, Emily came home from work during a heavy rainstorm. The wind was strong, and the streets were almost empty. As she entered the building, she saw Mr. Thomas near the stairs. He was carrying a large box. The box looked very heavy. He was trying to lift it alone, but he was struggling. Emily quickly walked toward him. "Mr. Thomas, can I help you?" He looked at her and shook his head. "No, no, I can do it." But as he tried to move the box, he almost lost his balance. Emily held the side of the box. "Please, let me help. It looks heavy." After a moment, Mr. Thomas nodded. "Thank you." Together they carried the box upstairs. Emily noticed that the box had words written on it. "Animal supplies." She became curious but did not ask questions. When they reached his apartment, Mr. Thomas opened the door. For a second, Emily saw inside. There were several boxes stacked near the wall, blankets, food bags, small bottles of medicine. But before she could see anything else, Mr. Thomas quickly moved the door. "Thank you for your help, Emily," she smiled. "You are welcome." As she walked back to her apartment, she wondered about what she had seen. Animal supplies? Why did Mr. Thomas need them? That night, Emily was reading a book when she heard another unusual sound from his apartment. This time it was different. It sounded softer, almost like a small cry. Emily put down her book and listened carefully. Again she heard it. A quiet sound. She walked closer to the wall. "What is happening there?" she whispered. For the first time, Emily felt that there was a story behind the quiet man next door. A story that nobody knew. A story hidden behind a closed door. And soon, Emily would discover the truth about the mysterious neighbor. A story hidden behind a closed door. And soon, Emily would discover the truth about the mysterious neighbor. Emily stood quietly outside Mr. Thomas's apartment. The soft crying sound came again. It was gentle, almost like a small animal calling for help. She knocked on the door once more. "Mr. Thomas?" she called softly. There was still no answer. Emily became worried. She remembered how tired he had looked the day before while carrying the heavy box. She wondered if something had happened to him. Just then, she noticed that the apartment door was not completely closed. It was slightly open. Emily hesitated for a moment. She did not want to enter someone else's home without permission. But if Mr. Thomas needed help, she could not simply walk away. She gently pushed the door open a little. "Mr. Thomas," she called again. This time the sound became clearer. It was not a person crying. It was a puppy. Emily looked inside and stopped in surprise. The apartment was nothing like she had imagined. It was warm, clean, and filled with soft blankets. Small beds were placed neatly around the room. Bowls of food and water stood in one corner, and shelves were filled with medicine, towels, and pet supplies. 6 small dogs were resting peacefully. Some were sleeping. One little puppy walked slowly toward Emily, wagging its tiny tail. Another was wrapped in a blanket with a bandage on its leg. Emily smiled with relief. "So this is the secret," she whispered. At that moment, she heard footsteps behind her. Mr. Thomas walked out of the kitchen carrying a small bowl of food. He looked surprised to see Emily standing near the door. "Oh, Emily," he said gently, "I'm sorry, I didn't hear you knocking." Emily looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry, Mr. Thomas. I heard noises and became worried. The door was open, so It's all right. Please come in." Emily stepped inside. The little dogs gathered around Mr. Thomas as he placed the food on the floor. They trusted him completely. Emily watched quietly. "I never imagined this," she said. Mr. Thomas looked at the dogs with a gentle smile. "Most people don't." He sat down in a chair while one of the puppies climbed onto his lap. Emily listened carefully. "I bring them here, feed them, take them to the veterinarian and care for them until they recover. Then I find families who are willing to adopt them." Emily suddenly remembered the heavy boxes. So those boxes contained food and medicine? Yes. And the strange sound, he smiled, were barking puppies. Emily laughed softly. "I can't believe everyone thought you were hiding something mysterious." Mr. Thomas looked down for a moment. "I never tried to explain." "Why not?" He gently stroked the puppy, sleeping in his lap. "After my wife passed away 5 years ago, I felt very lonely. One rainy evening, I found an injured puppy outside this building. I brought him home and cared for him." His voice became quieter. "Helping that little puppy helped me heal too." Emily felt tears forming in her eyes. "Since then, I have rescued every animal I could." She looked around the apartment once more. Everything suddenly made sense. The closed curtains kept the frightened dogs calm. The late evenings were spent caring for them. The boxes contained supplies. The strange sounds were simply animals waiting for love. There had never been a mystery. There had only been kindness. Emily smiled warmly. "Mr. Thomas, what you're doing is wonderful." He shook his head gently. "I don't think I'm doing anything special." "I do." The following weekend, Emily returned to visit him. She helped clean the small beds, filled food bowls, and played with the puppies in the garden behind the building. One by one, the frightened dogs slowly became happier. Emily looked forward to every Saturday. Soon the two neighbors became close friends. One afternoon, Emily had an idea. "Why don't we organize an adoption day?" Mr. Thomas looked surprised. "Do you think people would come?" Emily smiled confidently. "I know they will." Together they made colorful posters and placed them around the neighborhood. Emily also shared pictures of the dogs online. Within a few days, many people became interested. The apartment building's small garden was decorated with balloons and flowers for the event. Families arrived throughout the day. Children laughed while playing with the puppies. People asked questions about each dog and listened carefully to their stories. By the end of the afternoon, every single dog had found a loving home. Mr. Thomas stood quietly watching the happy families leave. There were tears in his eyes. Emily walked over and smiled. "They all have homes now." Mr. Thomas nodded. "They do." "Thank you," he said softly. Emily looked surprised. "For what?" "For being the first person who wanted to know the truth instead of believing the rumors." Emily smiled. "I almost believed them too. But then I remembered something." "What was that?" She looked at the empty beds that had once been filled with frightened puppies. "Every person has a story, and sometimes the kindest stories are hidden behind the quietest doors." Mr. Thomas smiled. "I'll always remember that." As the sun began to set, The apartment building felt different. The neighbors no longer whispered about the mysterious man next door. Instead, they greeted him with warm smiles. Some even volunteered to help him rescue more animals. The building had become more than a place to live. It had become a small community. Emily looked at the peaceful evening sky and smiled. She had moved there hoping to find a quiet home. Instead, she had found a true friend, and she had learned one of life's most important lessons. Never judge someone before you know their story. Kindness is often quiet, and the people who speak the least sometimes have the biggest hearts. Thank you for listening to Learn English Through Stories. We hope you enjoyed the story and learned some new English along the way. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and join us for more English stories. See you in the next story. Happy learning.